says we're live, so hi everyone. Thanks for coming out today. Even though it's not raining, it's still kind of crappy, but although getting nicer, right? And a bunch of people are joining us on Hangout. Very cool. What do we want to talk about this month? I think there were a few things. Oh, actually something unscripted that I just remembered. The news coming out of Black Hat. They're doing some good stuff. Some really interesting stuff. And I think I posted on Twitter, and I had a back and forth with a bunch of people. It kind of annoyed me personally that the Mac media just sort of writes this stuff off so easily. And I guess in some respects they're right in that they don't want to cause a panic. I don't think any of the news coming out of Black Hat was, oh my god, burn everything, nuke it from orbit. But I feel that they were the other extreme. I know there was something in Mac World, and there was something on Tidbits, and both of them were just kind of like, yeah, don't worry about it. That I feel like the response is somewhere in the middle. Like, what was the one called? Sand Trap?
Oh, it was Memory Hole or Memory Sink?
Sinkhole, that was it. And to me, like, that's not even OS 10, that's just like x86.
Yeah.
It's like, we're just going to poke this value into memory a million times, and whoop, we got escalated. It's like,
yeah.
It's crazy. And even though Intel says they fixed it, there are a lot of older machines out there.
Yeah.
And I think even more interestingly is like, that vulnerability's been there for forever. So it's like, what else is sitting in x86 chips that you might, not know about? Those are the things that I wish those articles kind of delved into a little bit. Like, yeah, this thing's patched, but who knows? And the Thunderstrike vulnerability, obviously, we had Travel here a few months ago talking about the first one. Now they have a new one, which is a little bit more worrying because you could get it from going to a web page. You could get it remotely,
right,
and then have it infect your hardware, and then you could spread that around as you move this Thunderbolt dongle around. And it sounds like, oh, maybe that's far-fetched, but like, there are VGA adapters in all these conference rooms, and very often conference rooms or conferences you find shared Thunderbolt equipment.
So just like a disease vector, it's the same thing.
It is. Ages ago, this might be before your time, do you remember the hardware virus we had here? We called it a hardware virus at the time. Nothing like Thunderstrike, but there was one conference room somewhere in this building that back in the day when these Macs had DVI adapters on the side of them, there was one adapter in one room somewhere that had a bent pin. And of course, that meant they put it in their laptop and it bent something else. So now they tried another adapter and it bent that pin. And of course, as people kept going, and like this person now brought their laptop to a new conference room and tried the adapter and bent that pin. They just ended up screwing up all of the hardware. So, yeah, we jokingly called it, a hardware virus, but it's not unheard of that people move around and end up sharing equipment. So it can definitely be a vector of attack. And I think, as we've seen, determined nation states or the NSA or those organizations, they take advantage of these types of holes. And, yeah, I want to know what else is kind of in these chips. So anyway, that was my little rant about all the stuff that came out of Black Hat. It's not nuke it from orbit, but it's it's more than don't worry.
Well, the dynamic library vulnerability that fit in the tweet, that was pretty intense, and it's still pretty intense.
That's another one. Yeah, I think that's
still just like wide open, though.
That's wide open.
Besides 10.10.5, folks are.
The thing that annoys me about that one is, I don't understand the code review at Apple. I don't understand how that works. So like, go to fail. Like when that came out, I kind of complained about like, was no one reviewing this code? Like someone should write code, someone should review it. But I will admit, go to fail was like this thing that if you only had one other person reviewing it, you could kind of scroll by it pretty quick and go, yep, looks good, but you did a good job. This one, there's all this code, and it's in the dynamic loader, which is open source, so you can look at it, right? And there's all this code that does this stuff in this block. But then the problematic code is just sort of like, yeah, I'm just going to throw this domain. Sure, why not? Like, someone should have picked up on that. Like, all right, there's a style problem. Even with the code's not a problem. It's like, oh, wait a minute, before we check this in, this is a style problem. There's a smell here that, why is this code separate from all the other code? So, yeah, the dynamic loader one's a weird one, and it's fixed in XLM. So,
Right.
yeah, I found that to just be sort of like an odd code review problem from Apple.
And also no hotfix whatsoever. It's just crazy.
Yeah,
Just
I kind of agree. Apple historically doesn't have a great track record at patching security holes.
That's how we
That
fashion.
should have been backported in days.
Yeah.
It's in 10.10.5, but it's still like
Yeah.
doesn't matter what it takes. Like this is particularly easy and quick. And
Go to fail was like they patched iOS really quick.
oh yeah,
And then like
I remember
users
it.
were like,
We're like, why did you just 0 day all of us?
Yeah, for OS 10 it was a bit disturbing because like you knew it was like, oh, nothing's checking SSL certificates right now.
Great.
It could all be invalid. Who knows? So anyway, but I mean, that was the Black Hat stuff is really interesting. Like the links that people go through to discover some of this stuff is really impressive. So yeah,
That's
much
the
more
reason I
engineering.
think it's going to take some very public, very common, very embarrassing exploit for Apple to change its behavior.
I
Or
don't know.
to-
You know, I think that's a tough
to
one.
take it
I don't
more
know if
seriously.
they'll change their behavior because they've had some embarrassingly public stuff, and then they'll patch that stuff very quickly if it gets press. But then, I don't know. But again, they definitely take iOS very seriously compared to OS 10.
Yeah.
Much more seriously. And there are more iOS devices, so I guess that's a good balance with them. It's a good trade-off. Yeah, so Penn State. Who went? You went to Penn State. Were you at Penn State? I don't think I can't. First thing I'll
You
say
presented
about,
last day.
what's that?
The
Presented
last
the last-
time slot.
Last slot.
I was presenting.
Okay. I was already in the car. Sorry. But I will
Like
say
most people.
it was a blur of a week for me. I don't know why. It just felt like
There was
I showed up and it
lot
felt
to
like, okay, I'm checking out the hotel. But in the 4 or 5 years I've been going, I think this was one of the best years. I had
was
a
pretty
great
big.
time. I met a lot of good people. And I can't believe the people I didn't see.
Yeah.
Like, I think I passed by Rich Trouton in the hall like once. Like I really didn't like sit down and talk to Rich, which I usually do at a conference. And then there were other people that like I saw on Twitter, and they're like, "You were at Penn State? Oh yeah, you were at Penn State? Oh my gosh, how did we not?"
You kept a low profile. I mean, I also
I don't
am
know.
loud.
I don't know
So-
how. I went to the Wednesday night thing.
Yeah.
Um,
I didn't. I was practicing.
But I did definitely meet like a whole new segment of people, and I think this was the first year at Penn State, so Russell and I presented. And this was the first year at Penn State I gave a talk with Google in the title. Most other times it's been sort of a generic computer science-y kind of talk or Mac talk. This is the first year I gave a talk that said something about Google, so there was like this whole new segment of people that interests.
Hmm.
So, but no, it was a good conference this year. What did you present on?
I presented on MDM, security
Oh.
features within MDM.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
Specific to a product or just in general?
No, just in general.
Oh,
Just
so-
thinking, planning around MDM and security.
Oh, that's good. I'll watch
So
that.
the first one last year I did planning around MDM, and so just like the things that MDM doesn't cover, and then so this one was like part 2, more focused on security.
Oh, that's cool. I'll watch that.
He just said that they posted a lot of stuff.
Yeah, I was just going to
They didn't
mention,
post that
so
yet.
they have been going through the videos and processing them and editing them and getting them up on YouTube. I don't know if they're all there yet, but
They're
it
not
seems-
yet.
It seems like the
There's a lot.
majority of them might be there
No, it's only like
A little bit
20
more.
or so.
out of,
Out of all of them, there was
I
like
don't know how many.
over 40.
Yeah, okay.
Pretty fair.
Halfway there. So anyway, anyone who's looking for the Penn State videos, they're
28 so far.
slowly going up onto YouTube,
Yeah.
and but I definitely understand the slowly part because it's a big job. It's work, editing all those things and
Yeah.
and doing all that work. And I don't know, favorite part, anyone? You didn't go.
I didn't.
No.
And it's great that they publish them. They're
It's
there
great that
for
they publish
everybody.
them. They do a good job. It's a great conference, especially if you're already on the East Coast of the U.S. It's relatively easy to get to. It's an affordable conference. I think you get a lot for your ticket price.
Yep.
It was at an all-time high for attendance,
Yeah.
I think. And that's one thing I will say. I think I kind of felt the attendance numbers. Like, rooms were crowded.
Yeah, you see that big room, the big room where they do the lunches. It was like a lot of tables were
Yeah,
packed.
it was crowded. And we were the first session, in the first block of sessions on Wednesday morning. And we walked into a room that was like
Packed.
wall to wall, people sitting on the floor. And because I guess by the time we were about to present, there were enough people sort of walking in the room, looking and thinking, like, I'm not standing or sitting on the floor, and just walked out. We repeated our session Friday morning to another pretty full room. So, yeah, you could kind of feel the numbers straining things a little bit, but it was a good conference this year.
Yeah.
Yeah, right?
Some
This was
good
your
thoughts.
first time there, right?
Yeah,
You enjoyed it? Any other impressions? There were some good sessions.
I enjoyed the death match. Okay.
Yeah. That was fun.
Yeah.
It's fun. I don't
I talked too long, but
I don't think it was intended to change anyone's mind, right? Like, you probably came in with an opinion and left probably with the same opinion. I don't
well,
know.
it was more, giving of people to actually take a side at the end versus being like, yeah, I know that I'm not actually going to change my mind anyway, and like I don't even want to even tell you what my opinion is because there's these highly charged people right in front of me. But yeah, I was like, I'll be able to write half as much of a presentation because I'll share it with somebody, and then I ended up going over and talking too much.
No, it was good. It was fun. It was a
Yeah.
fun session.
There hasn't been backlash yet.
Why would there be backlash
Oh, I'm expecting it
from?
people that well, I did get one piece of backlash right afterwards, but that was it. And it was like it was really unfortunate. But like I'm putting myself out there that I showed people alternatives to be the target, and it really, in the grand scheme of things, it's not that bad.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll talk about that later or something. But that's unfortunate to hear because I don't think there was anything. I didn't hear anything that anyone should have said anything about. But like,
I'm glad that you enjoyed it though, because
Yeah, yeah,
it was
it was
about entertainment as well.
Yeah. Oh, it was
Definitely.
It was a very entertaining session. Definitely the most entertaining session I attended that week.
I
But
think
even the sessions that I wouldn't call entertaining, they were information packed. You said you liked the OS Query one.
the
Yeah.
West Query
on
one was good.
Facebook.
Yeah.
Their open source tool.
I finally understood what the purpose of OS Query is.
Right. Yeah. I kind of read the site when it first came out. It's like, oh, okay, that seems kind of backward. But yeah, when you hear it from the people who are using it.
When they actually explain how it works, you're like, oh, okay, that actually makes sense. And then I downloaded it and like, oh, okay, this is actually
Pretty
pretty
useful.
cool. It's not something I see us using, but
Like that 3D desktop thing that they came up a long time ago of like you can organize your workspace by having a 3D, and it's like what the hell is this? And like you can instrument your OS with SQL, and I'm kind of like,
Yeah.
what nuts.
that's freaking good for you. But then when you actually realize that, oh no, we want Factor to be the fastest thing ever, and not have it have to be Factor, and we'll do all of the work. It's kind of like, okay, awesome. Can't wait.
If you guys had to choose one presentation other than Alistair's cage match that you wouldn't want anyone to miss, this is the one you want to watch, what would you guys say? I plan on watching all of them, honestly. Just curious.
That's a good question. I'm trying to remember what I sat in on and really like. I don't know. That's a tough one for me. I'll have to pass. Alistair, how about you?
Shay's was really
Shays was good.
entertaining,
What was the session?
but like it was about his auto package, his Python JSS, where he essentially made it so that the API was usable for the Jamf Casper suite, and the fact that he was going to do all the work of like here are the inputs, you'll get a good workflow out of this, versus what they have, which is kind of like, hey, you could just write some stuff and maybe stuff will happen. Like, he's the one that's getting cut on all the sharp edges of the API, and he therefore has brought it to, like, here are all your workflows that you would do with that. So, like, if you're a Casper user, god dang it, you know, like, that's what you want. For me, myself, it was the let's make decisions. Everybody's got choices.
Is that the authentication?
Yeah, the authentication plugin.
I was just going to bring that up. But
that was like opening my mind
I
to...
think that was good. I mean, it wasn't something that I didn't know about, but it was a fun session to be in.
Oh, yeah.
But it crashed and burned. Because the demo went off the rail. Like, there was something they couldn't get working at one point. So I think
it was Xcode wouldn't
right,
build.
It might be rough to watch afterwards.
Yeah,
but being in the session was fun. Like, and it was okay, and you could kind of overlook this. But yeah, there was a point where they couldn't get Xcode to either project
with the monitor, with the
monitor,
whatever. But it's still, it's like the
But he has source code up from it.
Yeah, and the commercial fast forwarder that you can do in VLC to like jump 45 seconds at a time. Like, yeah, you know, he's having a hard time. Okay, he's still having a hard time. Okay, okay, now we're back.
Yeah.
You figured it out.
I was going to say that one, but I think sometimes conferences, like personally for me, are a little bit. Like, the sessions aren't why I'm there. I'm there to meet people and the social aspect of it much more than the sessions, because the sessions like Casper, I'm not interested. What's new in Monkey? I'm pretty up to date on that. I don't, there were a lot of things like, okay, do I need to spend time in that session necessarily? Maybe, maybe not. So, but definitely like the hallway conversations. That's mostly why.
If you hadn't seen the Joe Chilcote's vFuse and associated tools presentation, he was actually like versus when in Vancouver he was just getting off of being sick and having traveled north. So like it was nice to see him do that well. But then I stepped on one of his jokes that he used. I felt like a dick for it. But it was still great to like be able to see that live versus recorded. I sat next to Mike Arpaia from the OS Query team. I was kind of like, that's fun to watch that with those guys. Was pretty cool.
All the speakers were really high quality. Like everything was stepped up this year. So anyway, there's my little plug for Penn State. It's a good conference to attend. I guess one of the next conferences coming up is MacAdmin in Sweden, which is a nice conference to go to because you don't get a lot of the overlap with the U.S. crowd. The U.S. crowd, you kind of see it all the same, the conferences. So MacAdmin is a really nice conference if you can get to it or speak at it or whatever. And then I'm in the throes of prepping for MacTech conference, so anyone who's interested in speaking or whatever, please let me know, because I'm kind of solidifying some of those spots and things. So if you're interested in coming out or speaking, well, let's have a conversation. So anything else that I missed in conference land or news land?
I posted my thoughts about Penn State conference to completely drill that home.
Oh, on AFB?
Yeah. And I just said, that's somewhat news. That in one day, Jamf now is responsible for a whole bunch of Macs.
Yeah, well, kind of. The announcement was...
Clips you guys.
Well, they will.
They will, yeah.
They will. I think they said...
They already had
250,000.
supposedly six-digit customers.
Yeah, it's...
But like, I don't know her.
So what's the IBM product that does the management?
They do
They used to
Master
have
60.
BigFix / Tivoli.
Yes, that was the one I was thinking of. But...
They also bought an MDM recently.
That also runs on BigFix.
Oh, God.
Yeah, it's like a veterinarian fixes. And now they are doing a partnership where they haven't purchased Jamf, but it's kind of, besides being at a university, the co-founder, Chip, he went from a consulting company. It's kind of like
right.
now he runs a big software company.
So, but from the announcement, it wasn't clear what pieces of Casper that they were going to use. It almost seemed like they might be just using it for imaging. I couldn't tell.
Good question.
They didn't really
It was
say.
pretty vague.
It was a really vague announcement, but I mean, hey, this is a huge move for Jam. I mean, they've been hiring a bit lately, so might have been in the contract workups for this. Like, oh, hey, we might need some more people to do training and support and things like that. So that's pretty good for them.
I mean, honestly, in their announcement, it wasn't even clear whether this is a service they're going to offer,
Right. Or it's only going to be
or a
used
tool, or internally. Like none of that was clear. So. Only that they're trying to work.
Well, they did the dividing lines to say iPad and iOS, they have an MDM. But this is Macs only.
Right.
And that it's there. What got the most press was internal to IBM themselves. Was that, hey, we're deploying Apple internally. We're giving people who want them Macs, and guess what? A heck of a lot of people are choosing Macs. This is what we're going to support those with. You don't hear about how much consulting IBM does when it comes to actual support. There's lots of that doesn't seem like a great business margin-wise and otherwise, but it doesn't mean that IBM hasn't been doing it for so long that they have a stuffload of customers.
It's still pretty unreal. It's like IBM. We're going to be in support of OS 10 and have 200,000-ish machines.
I still remember the picture of like Jobs standing in front of the IBM building, giving you the fingers.
Well, before Microsoft, right? It was IBM was sort of the enemy there making PCs. Yeah, cool. So we're done with that. The talk that Russell and I gave at Penn State was about open source. A good chunk of the middle section was on open source tools that we have written or Google has written that you can now use as Mac administrators, and we keep adding to that list of tools. And
one big old repo.
Since
That's being split.
yeah, we're actually in the midst of splitting that up. So I have like a bunch of internal tickets that say, hey, we need all these repos. That's going to get split up. But we're going to keep that little page as a pointer to all these other tools. And then since that talk, Russell's written Keychain Minder, and we've made that open source. So
should have called it Keychain Minder 2. I didn't realize there was an existing thing called Keychain Minder when I wrote it.
I thought it was an homage, but no.
I use it, but like I was like, yeah, that's gonna help your Google ranking though. Your search results. People try to find it.
Completely in my ignorance of what before existed. So I wrote this only because of the talk on security plugins. I didn't watch it. I didn't go to that talk, but Tom Bergen did. And he wrote FB2 Auth plugin.
Well, Tom Bergen was one of those presenters, wasn't he?
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
So not only did he go to that talk.
I didn't think he went to it. I didn't go, but he released this thing. He pointed us to it because it used something from Bank Destroyer.
That's right.
Yep.
So I'd not seen the session, but then looking at his plugin, I was like, oh, that would actually be a really good way to solve the keychain problem that we've had for many years, where users change their password on our internal website, and then 2 weeks later they reboot their computer and they get the pop-up saying your keychain password's out there, and they go, it's a keychain. I don't know what this dialog means. And then they go and visit our support people, and they say, the support people just click the button to reset. And then the support people moan at us because we hire very smart support people and they don't like to spend all day doing the same thing over and over and over again because they're not robots. So they moaned at us, I think roughly once a quarter. Once every 3 months, they're like, can you do something about this? We've always said, not really, because we have no way of knowing when the password is wrong. So I saw the plugin and I realized that you could actually probably do something because you have the password at that point by just locking the keychain and then unlocking it again with the new password. If it doesn't unlock, then we should probably reset the password. That didn't work very well because of iCloud syncing. If you lock that keychain, it locks local items. If you can't unlock it again, horrible things happen. So I ended up disassembling keychain access and found a bunch of secret functions that reset passwords and reset login keychain. So I made a nice GUI. Instead of locking the keychain and unlocking it, we make a hard link to the current keychain. Add that as a keychain. Try and unlock it, and then delete it again.
Ooh.
So the way keychain stuff works is it's like a shared singleton that the system has. So if you just make a new key, it uses the file name as its way of knowing whether this already exists. We just make a link to it, and that tricks it. So we can now try and unlock the keychain without locking anything that was already unlocked.
Right.
Because they're already logged in. And then if it doesn't unlock, we just throw up an ICY and say, do you remember your old password? It's just the easiest question in the world. Do you know what your previous password was? You just changed it like probably
2
10
seconds
minutes
ago.
ago. And if they say no, then we just reset it and get confused as to how someone managed to forget their password within 10 minutes. And if they click yes, we just ask them for their previous and new passwords. It would have been nice to be able to get this all integrated into the plugin, because then you don't have to ask for the new password again. But I tried making a UI that fits into a plugin, and it doesn't work. It does if you want a tiny UI that doesn't do very much, but the minute you try to do anything clever, it didn't work. And I ended up locking myself out of my machine like 100 times.
I saw him just have a separate machine with SSH into his other machine, like waiting to kill off things. To
Kill off.
to log back in.
Yeah, it's a really good way to lock yourself out.
Yeah, it's fun. So I think that was about 2 or 3 days of sort of intermittent messing about. And then we released it on a Friday. Best time.
Of course.
None of our machines, I think, going to stable next week. No, tomorrow. So only some of our machines have it. So we don't actually know how well it works yet. It may not work very well at all. There's over
Let us
1,000
know.
machines have it. I've tested it on a dozen machines. It seems to work pretty well. Other people on Twitter have told me it worked for them on their one machine that they tested it on. Your mileage may vary. Good luck.
I know. What was Rich Stratton? Rich Stratton was looking. Was it?
He said that he's already using the original keychain minder and wanted an updated version. So I think that was his needs. I hope so. I'd like to know if not. Like if anybody
The original
finds a bug.
keychain minder was that Joe Running? Who wrote that?
Don't know.
I don't remember, but
As
I
well
remember
back.
at some point it stopped getting updated. The source disappeared, and
Yeah.
people kind of hung on to this working version for a little bit, and it eventually kind of just stopped working. If I remember correctly.
It's also like there's a person you're attributing it to in your mind, but maybe that's not who was able to make it publicly available. That just was the person who was able to make it publicly available versus where they got the code from.
Maybe my memory's hazy.
Well, I'm just thinking of InstaDMG.
And I think it's going to be integrated into AD Passmon as well.
Yes, Ben
So if anybody who uses that, Ben is planning, I think, to integrate keychain minder into AD Passmon. So his thing will do everything.
Potentially. I mean, that's also a organization where you actually do get password roles on a regular basis, whereas the number one dirty secret of everybody is that they don't actually
Force them.
enforce expirations of passwords because there's enough that goes wrong that politically they don't win that battle.
We do, but we don't do it.
We don't do it frequently.
We don't do it very frequently. It's not annoyingly frequent. It's annoying enough, though. So
I remember-
a long time to type in one password. It takes about a week to get that out of my muscle.
I remember the guy was like, yeah, I've been here long enough that I've rotated all of the passwords that I use. I've gone back around again to the password that I used to use 3 password rotations ago. That you're then allowed to do it.
My wife's company, they rotate passwords every month. So she says, I'm not coming up with a new password,
Yeah.
so she just puts a number at the end.
That's
Yeah.
what most
And she knows that that's a terrible thing to do.
but that's exactly what they do.
So they're enabling her.
Yeah.
It's like,
You
Like
roll
if it
over
was
every
every
month.
6 months, I'd come up with a new password. But every month, nah, I've got better things.
There's also very little proof that actually helps anything.
I doubt it.
I mean,
besides password fatigue, yeah.
yeah,
Well, if your password's stolen, it's usually used straight away.
right.
I don't really see how that's helping.
Yeah, changing every month doesn't help.
Has anyone tried YubiKey?
Yes.
Can you share your experience?
Um,
Our experience
pretty good.
of these is weird. We've done a lot of stuff with them to make them not like a normal YubiKey.
Yeah.
And they sell different versions as
They
well.
sell different versions. They do sell this particular version. Yeah. You can stash your SSH keys and some other things on here. It works really well. It isn't like a traditional smart card. It's a second factor authentication, but it's not like a smart card. It doesn't present a certificate, and it doesn't integrate with the login window. So if you're looking for something to have a second factor at login or at authentication, that's not what it does. So, I mean, do you have a particular use in mind? Or?
Actually, I'm interested exactly about SSH sessions because, as I know, I think it's Facebook. Facebook uses
Yes, Facebook also uses
these things for SSH authentication to their servers, stuff like this.
Because the specific thing I remember about Facebook was that there was an article that these things are so easy to insert the wrong way that people were damaging their computers by inserting these upside down. That's what I remember from the article about Facebook using them, not so much how they use them. Yeah. But you can buy these off the shelf now and integrate them with like your Google login as a second factor.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, yeah, you can stash SSH keys on there.
But
But
you
it
just
just
for SSH in between any machine, but not to our servers.
Mm-hmm.
That network's locked. But just from getting from like my workstation to another workstation, we have SSH keys that are on those.
yeah,
And also you can stash multiple keys in there, so I have my GitHub key on there as well, which is nice. It's nice unless you run something like source tree, which is constantly connecting in the background to update your remote repository. So every so often I just get a little pop-up. Please touch your security. Like, no, go away.
yeah, so that's it. Like I've used both my USB ports for this Hangout, but yeah, it just requests a touch,
Mm-hmm.
so it knows that there's a human there, basically.
What about some disadvantages?
Well,
Security-wise, I don't think there really are.
I don't think there are many disadvantages. I think, you know, for a place like this, for Google, we just buy them by the bucket load, and people can just keep them permanently in their machines.
Mm-hmm.
So, but this is assigned to me, so I can take this to another machine and use it. So, I could see a disadvantage being, like at a smaller company, like how you distribute these, and like
The management
care about
process.
the expense.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas here, like, you know, the security weighs pretty heavily, and they'll spend the money and just like, here you go, take them, register them to yourself, and put them in your machine, and don't take it out.
We also buy so many of them, it must be less than $1 each.
Yeah, I thought we worked with Yubico on this particular design. I
think
so. There might be something in that partnership. I don't know.
What would be really nice would be getting them working at the login screen. I don't think that's an unsolvable problem.
Really?
Yeah, sure they will. I don't know if I care enough to do it, but I'm sure it's a solvable problem.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Well, Tom's done it for his org, but with that's their specific token that they
Yes.
need for their org.
I had a conversation.
I don't know that it's as wide open as a commercially available
Yeah.
consumer.
I don't see him on the Hangout, but I had a conversation with him, Tom Bergen, recently, kind of like, you know, how can we do second factor at the login window? But YubiKeys probably not it. I mean, there are commercial solutions that let you do it. So Apple used to have, and they used to push smart card support. Like it was a big deal for Apple, and then I don't know if that support dried up or went away, or if it's still there and they're just not.
I think they took the time to get FIP certification, and that was part of it. And they're like, we did all this work, please use it. And
Yeah.
then no one used it. Fine, not doing that again.
What was that commercial one? There was a commercial, and like they had a 5-user, 4-user kit. Was it crypto card? Crypto somebody or other. Someone will remember this, not me. Anyway, it was like crypto something, and they were one of the first smart card ones on the Mac. And I don't remember. Russell's trying to look it up, but whatever. But yeah, I don't think I ever saw that support go very far. I think, like Russell was saying, like Apple probably needed it for certain government organizations and got the certification, and then Yeah. There were all these other rules in government organizations that exempted Macs anyway, like the camera being built in was like a deal breaker for a lot of
No.
government organizations. They were like, yeah, you're not bringing that thing in. Unless we smash the camera to bits or something.
I think they were removing them for a while.
I think, yeah, there was someone who was physically removing.
That's not.
Well, you could unload the software KX, but of course you could just load them and then it all works again. So, yeah. So before I forget, and before we kind of wrap up, Elliot Jordan reminded me when we were talking about conferences, but I missed it till now. So don't forget about the new conference in London too. So yeah, there's a conference coming up in London in February. I forget the name of it. London MacAdmin. Fortunately, that's in February, so you have a little time to look it up if I'm not remembering the name correctly. But yes, London Apple Admins, and who is that? Ben Toms and Brandon Gilbert.
No, that's just the
It's not a conference. It's like a.
just a group.
To me.
Okay. Oh, that's their
It's the
monthly
meetup.
meeting. There's a conference, and I can't remember the name of it. And yeah, Sam Keeley says it's run by MSIS, so it's run by the same people who do that monthly meeting, but they're doing a more formal, sort of like it's a 1 or 2 day conference in London in February. So
There was something I actually wanted to bring up.
yes,
On the Mac Enterprise list, somebody brought up something that I guess is still under NDA with Apple, where they can manage Macs without binding to ED.
But so yeah, that's not that the tool is under NDA. It's that you can only get the software if you have a professional services contract.
I see.
And I went to a presentation that I wasn't supposed to be at. So since I wasn't supposed to be there, I can't get in trouble for having been there more than I was already in trouble the entire time. It's you get Kerberos working when you're not bound. Period. That's what it is. End of story. So you prepare a machine for somebody, you don't care to bind it to your domain, you ship it to them, they never get on your network really, or they don't even get VPN, and you can still get Kerberos working and their password rotated, like properly.
that sounds awful.
But it's like, what it's using is on that thread. It's like, hey, maybe they used the cast plugin and that's it. Yes, for Kerberos, and that's it.
really
But it's
small
like
thing.
auto mounting
Specific.
works better than you. Things. It's that there is a specific customer use case that they decided, and people further on the thread are not being so gracious when they say, they kind of need a reason for being as Apple Professional Services, because I guess they get tired of doing Wi-Fi site surveys all of the time, or talking about certs all of the time.
Okay.
So this is like something for them to do with Macs.
Oh, someone, Para Olsen
Thanks.
in the group chat posted a link to Jamf Nation that has an entire thread about
All of that stuff that's not really under
all the
NDA.
stuff that's not really, yeah,
Okay.
or that doesn't exist. But yes, apparently you have to talk to Apple Professional Services.
So they have every, right to dictate their terms.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Will help you integrate Mac into your Active Directory environment without binding. All right.
Which
Well,
made me
yeah, of course,
wonder why.
with well, but of course, yeah, of course that would rely on Kerberos. That makes a lot of sense.
It's about making it work in your browsers for all of those apps that are not going to change, but you don't want to give people VPN. You don't
Right.
worry about them being able to contact the home office.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. Anybody else? Going once, going twice. We'll wrap up relatively on time this morning, in some reasonable amount of time, or this afternoon, wherever we are. Let's try, apparently.
Paris.
I paged Tom, but he's busy, I guess, doing, I don't know, work things. Just because I know rebuilding crypts kickoff. First, Graham was messing with login script plugin,
Oh, yeah,
which
yeah.
is pairs, hey,
Yes.
you get the power of the login plugin, but you can just hook it up to whatever, and therefore it will run first. He made some code changes, and there was somebody last night who works at Stack Overflow who I invited here, but couldn't make it, who was using Google App Engine with Crypt as the client, and he modified some of the Django code for Crypt. And so Greg was like, why don't you just use cauliflower vets?
Maybe they didn't know about that project at first. Who knows?
But so like my talks with Tom and Graham
It's a crazy circle.
a bit. He was like, "Do you think anybody could like use this?" And I'm like, "Not the people who are already using Google App Engine for File key escrow, but you can sure try." But we're talking about File Vault before the machine. Like our workflow wants to hey, why don't you just get it from my auth instead of me having to see another dialog and enter it again? The only dialog that I actually kind of want to see is, hey, because we're kicking off File Vault, because for whatever reason your machine wasn't encrypted at this point, you're going to see a reboot because I can't kick off File Vault without reboot. It reboots and everything's hunky-dory. Then we log into machines. We want only AD users can log into machines in the first place, because you got a username and password field, and how else are the users going to get created if everyone's just the same? Everyone who logs in subsequently who has valid AD credentials, they can contact the network to go ahead and get added to File Vault 2, because we have shared models in some places. Then we want to remove us, just us, on logout. And we want to roll the local admin, because we still have a local admin. But we're trying to figure out, okay, we have login script plugin for login. What are we going to do on logout? It's like, yes, you got to do a login hook next. But there are people who are trying to add logout hooks to Outset. And so just in general, we're looking at what changes are going to be necessary. And in the meantime, we're breaking a whole bunch of stuff. Crypt server now has encrypted. The database is actually encrypted when it stores, so we can say, hey, Jamf, look at one that we got on you. Not only can we migrate in and migrate out, but we can control what fields are encrypted. But we can also escrow other secrets along with it. Not like the Windows people are going to ask us to be an escrow point for BitLocker. We use PGP anyway.
I think we're migrating a bit later.
We do for Windows.
Oh.
Yeah. But it's like Tom was going to help us possibly with how can we strip this down so that it's a real, hey, we're going to grab this information and just poke up the UE. But still, he thinks he's going to be able to just make that intermediate layer of saying, okay, I've grabbed your auth from user logging in. I'm going to pass that off to be to Crypt's original code for escrowing, so why the heck not? And then even that's just like wrapping curl. But then we won't have to maintain Crypt client in PyObjective-C.
I wish I knew how to use Hangouts.
But it's like Tom was going to work with us on that, and now Graham's thinking that he's going to rewrite Crypt client in Swift to stay away from the PyObjective-C. So things are still kind of primordial soup in Crypt land.
Avoiding PyObjective-C is never a bad idea.
Yeah, I agree.
We're currently not getting good error messages when the curl command fails, and it just fails silently. It keeps a key that it's going to use to try to re-escrow as if it lost network connectivity or whatever after you put in the password and clicked go. But yeah, there's a lot of shoring up that we could do to the foundation because we concentrated server side for a little while. And by we, I mean Graham.
One possible last thing. I have no idea how to use Hangouts.
You guys aren't any closer to open sourcing. Speaking of open sourcing,
Yeah.
over Thunderbolt's imaging.
Oh, yes. That,
We are.
I think, yeah, we need to do a little code cleanup, but that's one of the, as I'm breaking out this one big master blob of stuff, there are a number of other
Good thing you're here.
Yeah, there are a number of other projects that I'm like, oh, yeah, by the way,
Awesome.
we should be doing this. So
We really need to get that open source. We also need to add the thing where it can do multiple machines at once.
yes, but we can,
With the cool UI and show it in the back of the Mac.
yes, we can go in stages. On chat, Katie Murphy asks, sorry, late to the party was the set UID issue and patch discussed in the first half. And I mistakenly said, yes, talked a little bit about that, and then I said, oh, wait, SUID, I was thinking about dynamic loader. So what,
That's the same thing, right?
I thought it was, but maybe I'm wrong. SUID would not be dynamic loader.
It's sort of.
All right, so it was the not patched in 10.9 but patched in 10.10, wasn't it?
Wait, we can actually find out. What was that? Sorry? Yes.
Weird. Me. Oh, no, I think the set UID bug is like a bit old news at this point, right? But it's just that it allowed for a privilege escalation locally on a machine. But it's interesting because most places don't actually disallow like USB mass storage or like reading from USB ports, right? Like physically on their machines. So I actually think it is kind of important, and I'd sort of heard word on the street that Apple was probably not going to patch that one very quickly, I guess because it's just a local privilege escalation and not like remote code execution. But, you know, if you're concerned about like social engineering or someone just, you know, like dropping a USB near your company, then I think you should be concerned about it. So someone had released a patch. It was on GitHub. And I'm trying to find the link. I can't find where I saved it, but I know a little C, but like not enough of the Darwin kernel to really feel comfortable with it. So, you know, I know and respect all of you guys in MacOps. I was wondering
So
what you guys thought of it.
I don't think I've seen that, but so it patches the kernel, or it's something that just drops the SUID bits from.
My understanding was that was the DYLD one, but the kernel extension that was written just hooks execution and drops DYLD environment variables.
Oh, right.
From anything that's set UID. So if there's a set UID binary tries to run, it changes the first letter of the DYLD environment variable to be an X.
That's right. Now I remember this issue. I'm sorry. This is a little bit different than the more recent dynamic loader.
Yes, that was one that was, like, the idea of the patch was really cool, but not something I would ever want to put on any machine that's in production, because it uses trusted BSD Mac framework, which is now a stable framework in 10.11, but not in 10.10. And entertainingly, some of the policy functions have different argument numbers between versions. So if you load an extension from 10.10 SDK on 10.11, you'll get a kernel panic. If you load one from 10.9 on 10.10, you'll get a kernel panic. And it also uses an interesting hack, but not one, again, that I think maybe should have in production, where it takes a pointer to the middle of a struct, and then uses offset of to work its way back to the beginning of the struct, and then works its way forward again to find the information it actually needs. Again, it's cool, but 60,000 machines? No, thank you.
That was like
on my personal machine at home, when I could debug it, that would be fine. But
Yeah, that's right. There was that. I forgot about that.
James Parkley was doing the presentation on PyObjective-C, and I took because we are using Casper for inventory, I took a shell shock checker that he made, because he's got people with, you know, from ports, from brew, from like people could actually load a bunch of different shells. And so what he did was he actually exercised the the proof of concepts for each individual one to know if you were affected as part of the checker. And so it's kind of like you're exploiting all of the machines to tell if they're exploitable. But I was kind of like, maybe that's a little bit heavyweight in CPU at the very least.
No, I think those all ran pretty quick. They're all pretty. You could do some relatively harmless checks.
But there is the cure worse than the sickness type things that could go on with, especially with like kernel extensions. Suid scan might be what she's thinking about. It's humanly possible.
I don't remember, but yeah, maybe it was Suid scan.
This was for the 10.9 machines that therefore we're never going to get the patch. And it's more a reactive type thing that you have to. There's no like OS query where it can like subscribe to directories and use FS events and things like that. This was a, hey, why don't you just run it on things that you're worried about having been executable. But that is what it's called. I had to search the Mac Enterprise list for Suid, and I found it.
There's another one that Suid was, like ZUID was exploited by was root pipe.
Yes, that's right.
Suid's actually interesting because we disable a bunch of SetUid binaries that I think no one should ever be using. We can't anymore in 10.11.
Yeah, that's gonna. I think, so we filed a bug with Apple on this. Like, so if we really want to drop.
Yes, the answer so far has been
Yeah.
reboot to the recovery console, disable
SIP.
SIP, change the SetUid thing, and then turn SIP back on again. I'm like, yeah, that's great on one machine.
Right.
We got tens of thousands of machines. You're telling me I'm going to do this for all of them? I don't think they've responded to that.
Yeah.
I think we might have made them angry, actually.
Which is kind of funny because they might end up coming up with some solution just because.
That's also not a great solution because the first time a system update comes out, we'll just put them all back again.
No, but we have filed a number of issues with Apple around SIP, and they came up with reasonable, like, oh, we'll just move that file, or we'll unexempt it. We'll exempt it from SIP, and you'll be able to change that file. Like, okay, great.
But they can't do that for these SetUid. Because that would be defeating the purpose of having it.
Yeah, I know. But I'm just holding out hope that they will come up with a reasonable solution for this.
Maybe they'll just disable SetUid on things that we don't want.
That would be fantastic.
Is the user template still under SIP in 10.11?
That was one of the things I think Apple just said, like, hey, we're going to exempt. That was one of the ones that we asked about. So you'll be able to go and touch that file, and SIP won't protect it, won't complain about it.
I mean, we've been ascetic in our way of just avoiding it because why mess with it at all? Because we don't need to. We have tools to not have to modify that. But it was funny how over the releases, it's been like they started out with, hey, those directories that you see in the slide, and now it's a stuffload of applications they're specifically not allowing you to touch. It's kind of like, oh, you saw them copy directory utility and use it as a attack vector, and you're kind of like, you know what? Let's just cut that right down right here. We have a tool. Let's use this hammer on all those mosquitoes. And
yeah,
good for them.
User template is now exempt.
Yeah.
In beta 6.
I think I'm actually still 5. Because I can't update again.
That conf file is just kind of illegible though. Of like, what is the star and like, what are they trying to say?
I did work it out. No, I'm looking at it again.
Right?
I don't remember now.
This is like YAML versus every other JSON.
Yeah.
It worked.
Yeah. Right into the dirt. Yeah.
I will say though that I like SIP. I've seen a bunch of people sort of on social media and whatnot kind of complain about it, but I think it's a step in the right direction.
My complaint about SIP has just been that it's built on top of a bunch of other things that were already creaky.
Yeah.
I'd rather they spend some time fixing the other security things that are broken before adding security things on top of those things that are broken.
Yeah, it's
like
not...
entitlements is just generally broken, and SIP works on entitlements.
Yeah.
So whilst entitlements remain broken, SIP is pointless. If they instead fix entitlements, we'll be better off.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm hoping
Sandboxing stuff.
that makes them fix entitlements and sandboxing at the same time.
But Sam Peely says, if you're using YubiKeys with two-factor auth enabled, then SIP is bad with this file. Usually the exact smart card services drivers, blah, 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 to OP list. So I don't know if we've tested that or not. I don't think we've gotten that far because Beta 1 was actually pretty good, but we had some of our own stuff broken, and then by the time we got around to fixing our own stuff and testing, Beta 3 came along and broke some stuff, and so we've been kind of fighting with that
Cat and mouse
ever since. So, okay, well, thank you, Sam Keeley. We will keep that in mind when we're up to testing that.
Yeah, libexec would look like a directory that they would want to
Yeah, protect, yeah.
prevent access.
All right. Russell, also a question from Katie Murphy again. Also a question about the scope of Santa. Do you plan on it remaining binary whitelisting? As in, is DLL injection outside the scope of Santa because it's an issue with binary whitelisting as a technique?
The DLL injection protection is something I'd like to add, but because of the way DYLD works, it's not really feasible. There are sort of some things that I could try, but I mostly just want Santa to work reliably.
I think
not cause horrible performance issues first. The next thing that Santa will be adding is just general file monitoring and potentially whitelisting of persistence directories. And you try writing to library launch DBs. I'd like to be able to whitelist what is being written into there or what is doing the writing. That would be a nice feature, being able to say only installer is allowed to write into this directory. Then that kind of defeats the purpose because everything goes to installer.
Yeah.
This is the problem, everything on OS 10 is just built on top of things that are broken.
So then, if you don't have that functionality right now, or like, do you not currently know what process is writing to things? Like, is there no concept of like an installer or like a chain of installers in Santa?
So the issue with that is that in OS 10, installer is just an Apple thing that installs packages. And when installer runs, Santa just sees that installer is running, not what installer is installing. So we can check to see what files installer is putting down and try and whitelist those individually. That would be a pain to manage.
That's a lot of data you would need in advance. And
Yeah.
We kind of talked about that at one point, but yeah, it's a pain. But I think the issue for Santa is that we're trying to keep it kind of small and focused and just sort of another piece of your defense rather than this one all-encompassing, hey, this is the magic bullet that's going to fix everything. It's kind of like, well, in conjunction with all these other protections you have on the platform, it should help you. Like,
But just adding file write monitoring generally, I think, is a good idea.
Yeah.
Because another team that we were planning on adding another daemon to all of our systems that just prints out a log of every file that's written everywhere and hashing for files that are of a certain size. And we're like, well, it's doing most of the same work Santa is, let's just add that to Santa.
Yeah.
It's not worth
having yet another thing like that.
I mean, yeah, OS query is not about the remediation that Santa can do, though, and enforce because it's trusted at that level. Like, OS query is just like another daemon.
Yeah.
And it's supposed to be hands-off, but it's supposed to be able to watch all of those file writes because that's the bent that they took from the very beginning. It's how do we observe, how do we instrument?
Yeah, we're already instrumenting everything, pretty much, but not with OS query. And that works as long as you know what you're meant to be watching for. We've reached a point where we can't always know what to watch for, so it's easier just to let's just watch for the things we know are good. We've got all these systems like virus total and things that we can use to work out. Like, the problem with binary whitelisting systems generally is that it's a pain for the admin to have to constantly whitelist everything.
Right.
So we've got sort of two routes to fix that problem. Is make whitelisting things that we put on machines easy, which we have some tools that we're writing for, and then make it so that users can whitelist things themselves, but not just one person. Let's make it
Kind of mass critical.
So we're trying to do a sort of Stack Overflow thing with our web interface where users have reputation and they can put their reputation on a thing that they vote on. And then if that thing gets enough votes, it gets whitelisted. And if users whitelist things that admins later go, hang on, that's definitely not good, then those users lose their reputation. So
social voting. And
social voting.
This will be open source. The server side of Santa will be open source. So.
But that doesn't like, what is the return on that if somebody starts voting something that's just like actually malicious?
Every single user who voted on a malicious thing, their reputation just drops. And then they can't write those things again.
Their votes
But-
no longer count.
But does that create a hole for some certain
Well,
period
this
of
is,
time? before
this
it
is
comes back?
after it's gone through some sort of checks at all, the fact that it's out there and doing things.
That's
It's
the other
running.
thing is when we
Yeah.
get to the web interface that they vote on, we provide them information like, we send
Here's what
that
it's
binary
doing
to
already.
virus total,
Right.
and if virus total has more than one virus scanner came back and said this is bad, then that's a good sign for them probably not to vote on it.
Right.
And if there's like a certain number, we just don't let them vote on it. It's like this is obviously not good. We're not going to let you vote. So silly.
So
What
there's
entitle someone to a vote, though? Like, that seems like a system that can be engineered. For
Well, they have to log
malicious
into our web interfaces, so if they can get to Google login, they can vote. If you can break through Google login, hold on.
We're bigger
You're hired.
programs.
All of our users get votes, so they start off with X reputation, and then that can go up or down over time. It's that going up and down over time bit that we haven't quite perfected yet. Stack Overflow had growing pains when they're trying to work out how much points you should gain and lose for things, so that's the bit that will need tweaking. We've had social voting for a while, but it never had, you weren't previously staking a reputation on it. Yeah. I personally think that staking a reputation on it is the best way to make people vote properly. Because at the moment, users just go, my friend said that they wanted this, so I'll vote. I don't care. That doesn't, I don't lose if I vote on things.
Right. This eliminates the popular vote.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and I don't know if you saw the question. So actually now two questions. What's the timeline on open sourcing AppNut? And are you going to include any functionality similar to Caster? Like, I don't actually know how that's set up with like the snapshotting and everything, like diffing, I guess, what's going on during an installation or something. But like, I'm not sure. For example, I know how most of these antiviruses in VirusTotal even work on OS 10. I'm not sure what I think of their assessment. So it really would be great to have something like a VM that could like assess those things. Is that on the radar at all?
Well, open sourcing the server, which we're going to call, do we know what we're going to call that?
I don't know. It's currently called Elfin Workshop.
We think we're going to call it Elfin Workshop to go along with Santa.
But that won't be released until after we've released it internally, so sometime
Right.
before the end of the year.
We hope to open source it around, say, November, maybe. That might be in conjunction with some event happening in the Mac community around November.
As for the second question of Caster, I have no idea. We'll be using that, but that's based on a whole bunch of Google technologies that I don't think we have any way of open sourcing. And I don't even know that specific thing exists anymore. I think it's been replaced by an all-new, better thing that's even harder to open source. A general-purpose virtual machine instrument this program while it does stuff, that would be amazing. But as we already have a thing, I'm not into writing things that replace things we already have. Somebody else wants to take that on, or pay me to do it, that would be fine. But yeah, we already have that, so it's not something we would want to write again. But we will have ways for Elfin to send binaries off to things like that. So if somebody does write a general purpose, send me your binaries and I'll test them. We can link the two together, easily enough.
Yeah, I had an infection where it's just like, regular browser hijack, but the next thing that I wanted to see was, okay, how do I get Apple to add that to the XProtect list of things that they're going to block? And guess what? They need a info.p list with valid values in it for the browser plugin. And I'm kind of like, they're not going to have that. Like, there's no developer ID in this bundle. There's no, wasn't even a malware company whatever for it. It was a little hard to see how I turn around and then report that.
I wonder what part of Apple asked you for that. Because I've always wondered whether there is actually a way to support the people who work on it to protect signatures. It doesn't seem like it.
I thought we did have a conversation, not us, but like,
Mr. Castle and those folks?
Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
know. But I can imagine if you contacted general support or alliance and said, "Can you add this to XProtect?" They'd be like, What's X plus X?
They'd be like, let me move this over to the circular file.
Thanks. I think we're done. So
Thank you.
Thank you.
thanks everybody, and see you next month.